Hello, this is John Firth of Firth and Friends. I'm here with Darren Mass, who is an entrepreneur extraordinaire. It seems like everything he touches turns into gold, and I'm thrilled that we're doing, I think, our fourth LinkedIn Live together. Just a few words about Darren. He had a firm, communications firm. He's an engineer by trade, by profession. And what's interesting about that is that he wrote the business plan and had a earnout date of $40 million for that business exactly 10 years after the date of his business plan. And that actually happened. That was the first thing I learned about Darren. Since then, I've learned that he is a great presence on LinkedIn Live in my Firth and Friends series. And he always gets the highest number of people and the most minutes watched. So I'm thrilled to have Darren here. We are going to be stress testing his new business therapy group. And we're going to turn this into a little bit of a game. I'm using the business canvas model, for those of you who know it, as the structure. So there are 9 areas we're going to talk about, and you'll see them as they come up. We'll spend about 3 minutes on each category, and then I'll score him on a rating of 1 to 10. So there's 9 categories. That'll be 90 points, and he's going to give you his elevator speech. So that also will count as the 10th one. And I will, after we're finished, spend 10 seconds to say the score and why I gave him the score. So with that, Darren, tell us about your business in 30 seconds or less.
All right, John, that was fun. I love gamifying things. Business Therapy Group provides telemedicine services for entrepreneurs, individuals with a vision, small business owners, and executives by connecting them with experienced business therapists or consultants.
Good. I would give you a 9. What I was missing there was that little hook, that weird little phrase. I have a client came up with his little elevator pitch, and it was awesome. He said, "We are not your typical construction company. Everyone's a construction company. We treat our staff like human beings and not like tools." And I thought that was perfect. So that was that last bit, I think.
Well, that could be taken multiple ways. So yeah,
exactly.
That one was better. But 9 to me is no in German. So I don't know. You're going to have to work on this.
All right. Yet. So we're going to move on to the next thing, which is the first part of the business canvas model. Tell us what the customer segments are for this business therapy business that you have started.
Sure. So I am a staunch believer in knowing who your customer is and identifying them. And with Business Therapy Group, we have 2 different customers. We have the actual revenue generating paying client. That is the entrepreneur or the person with a vision that needs a business therapist. They need to speak to a business therapist. They need consultative work. They're the ones that are going to be paired with a business therapist. That's the paying member. So that's the customer number 1. And the problem that we're solving there is we're able to supply business therapists with that customer in a way that is different than you would currently find a consultant right now. Right now, if you want a consultant, especially if you're starting out, it's really tough to find one. There's a whole sea of them in LinkedIn and the universe, but how do you pick the right one? You may be fortunate enough to have a friend that will introduce you to someone that they know of or have used, but now we're talking about dating. And sometimes you just don't like the date you're on. And then your hands are up in the air wondering who's next. Well, through the Business Therapy Group platform, there's multiple consultants or business therapists that you can choose from. So that helps fix that missing component for that customer. The other customer is the business therapist themselves. As a business consultant myself, my biggest struggles and challenges were in acquiring customers. It takes a lot of time and attention and cost. It is a big challenge for windshield time. You can't bill a client for windshield time. So if you bill them for 1 hour, sometimes it takes 3, and we're not accounting for that. And unfortunately, billing and collections, you as a business consultant are doing a great job. You do what you do best. You're helping your clients out. And then your client receives a bill at the end of the month or the beginning of the month, and net 30 is the best you can do. Sometimes you have to chase the client despite the fact that you are coaching the client to pay their vendor bills on time ahead of time. So having a Business Therapy Group platform solves that challenge for both sides.
So you have both these customer segments. You have the clients, the users of the platform, i.e. entrepreneurs and small business owners and CEOs. And then you have people like myself as the providers of the services. By the way, are you hearing an echo?
I am not.
Okay, then it's only me. By the way, Barbara Fonte says hi. Hi, Barbara. Barbara was the first in this series for this year.
Hello.
Do you do any kind of screening for the providers of business therapy?
For the therapist, absolutely. Yes. As of right now, we have to meet. I have to check your background. I have to believe that you are a consultant and you understand the consulting model, and you are a selfless consultant, and you want to help your clients out, and you have a proven track record of helping your clients. Now, obviously, that is not scalable. So as Business Therapy Group continues to scale, we will scale the platform to be able to do more of an automation, right? At the end of the day, when you look at Uber doesn't meet with every single driver. They have figured out a model to do a background check, to look into the driving record, the history, to look at the driver's license.
They just need to learn how to make money.
Exactly. Right now, while it's still in its infancy stage, I have the availability to be able to screen every business therapist. In fact, a lot of the business therapists today are those that I have either hired myself as business consultants or worked intimately with in the past.
That's great. And we're going to talk a little bit in later parts of this business canvas model about the future. Right now, we are talking a little bit about the here and now. So I will give you a 10. I was thinking of a 9 only because you use the word consultant. And I think consultant has I'm gonna give that to you. I'll give you a 10 because you really have thought about this. But there's a difference between being a consultant, a coach, and a trusted advisor. At least in the world I come from, I ran the trade association for the consulting industry. And we struggled with this all the time because a consultant has some not great overtones, lots of paper, not a lot of action, or systems integrators. I think what you're talking about is really a trusted advisor.
Yes.
Somebody you literally trust who's advising you. So that would have been, I'll give you that one. So that was the only thing I would caveat. So let's talk about now the channels. And by the way, everybody, I'm sitting here with Darren Mass. He is a great entrepreneur who has made quite a lot of money and been very successful. And we're talking about his new business therapy group. So how are you going to get in touch with these two customer segments? What are the channels you're going to be using? You talked about your own personal network. That's a channel. But what other channels will you be using?
So when you attract business therapists, consultants, trusted advisors, John, there is a channel right there. Every successful consultant, trusted advisor already has relationships. And by solving a lot of the pain points that a trusted advisor deals with today, it makes it a lot easier for them to recommend coming over to this platform versus their own either Zoom meeting or online meeting. It's creating a easy to use, easy to consume environment. So that is a big channel right there. The very client, the very customer becomes the channel. There's also the referral opportunities from existing clients. If you serve your client to the best of your ability and they feel the perceived value for the cost is in alignment, well, people love to share. They love to talk. And then obviously there's the social media approach and all the social distribution opportunities out there.
Any channel in particular that you think will yield a lot, i.e. social media channel? Will it be Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter?
Well, of course, LinkedIn is the best networking social media channel there is for the purposes of business. So yeah, LinkedIn over any other platform would be the best.
Okay. And we're going to get to the value proposition, which is the content part, the what you're going to say to people. Is there anything, you're great at new technology. You've opened my eyes to Crisp, which I couldn't get working today, to filter out noise. So is there anything out there that the average Joe doesn't know about that you might have as a secret weapon in the social media space?
Yeah, there's analytical tools which were newly introduced to me. And, in the past, I have used LinkedIn. I've looked at every post and I see how it does as far as likes or impressions. And that's kind of daunting. And I didn't know there was something else out there. And there is. There's a tool that you can use. There's actually many where it concatenates all of your posts. It builds charting and graphs. It alerts you when a post can be reposted. So there's lots of tools and resources you should be using. When it comes to LinkedIn, obviously you should have the premium level or premier, whatever they call it. Sales Navigator is important as well. Unfortunately, all of this comes at a recurring cost, and it eats away at a lot of that revenue in the beginning. But it's a cost of doing business, and you need these tools and resources to find a greater level of success.
Now, you have seen quite a lot of success. You've really only been running this platform since the beginning of the year. And yet, how many clients have you sourced through the platform, who are on the platform now?
So for my own personal consulting engagement, I'm at 22 clients, which is a lot.
Yeah,
in the past, when I had to drive or commute to a client, there's no way I could handle that many clients. But now it's fairly easy. It's especially, there have been some good things that have come out of the pandemic, and one of them being the ability to conduct a Zoom style or an internet style, web style meeting.
Absolutely.
It's the standard. It's normal now, and I think it's more appreciated by a client. Right. I can still see you face to face. I can still have that conversation. Body language is there. The enthusiasm is there. Right. But we don't have to waste an hour of windshield time.
Right. Exactly. And I actually price my services in a way that they get 2 hours with me face to face, but then there's 45 minutes to an hour and a half travel time sometimes. Or they can do 4 LinkedIn sessions or Facebook session, not Facebook, Zoom sessions for the same price.
Listen, if you're an effective, trusted advisor, John, I'm going to keep throwing that out there. We're business therapists. You're doing a great job to service your client. You're holding your client accountable for tasks, right? It doesn't matter where you meet. It's the message that creates the effectiveness.
Right. And we're going to talk in a second about that. That falls under value proposition and so forth. So I'll give you a 10 for that. I think you've got the channels. I know there's a lot more detail there, but we have limited time. I really wouldn't say anything. I love the analytics tool. I don't know if you want to name it or not. We're not here to give free promotion, but
I don't care if I do or don't. I've liked it. It's called Shield Analytics. I don't have any sponsorships, but I've had success with it. There's probably a billion others. A slight exaggeration on the number there is, but there's many of them. So it's do which one feels right for you. I think all of them will offer some sort of free trial. This one was introduced to me. It works. I'll stay with it.
Yeah, excellent. But it's important. The analytics tell a whole story. So Nori Lee asks a question. How do you handle negative posts on social media that might hurt your business?
So luckily haven't faced any of those yet. I'm sure they will happen. And the best way to handle it is to respond with, the customer service approach. Sorry you feel that way. How can I help rectify the situation? Or you could choose to ignore it, because sometimes you will have people that just don't like the product you have to offer.
Right.
Sometimes your product isn't for everyone, and that's okay. Not everybody can be your customer. Negative posts can be tough, though, and they're usually derived from a negative experience. So my best advice would be try to get on top of that one right away, and handle it with kindness.
Yeah. Well, and then there's Glassdoor, but that's for employees. And I've had several clients who have struggled with bad Glassdoor reviews, because I don't think you can have them taken down. You can only respond to them. But that's more employees than customers. I have said I have never seen a negative post about me. They may be out there. So I think there's also a question of how do you become aware of a negative post, because it does require a certain surveillance of everything. And I've got about 5 or 6 different engines out there. And I always forget to look at certain ones. And a month later, I suddenly see all these messages to me that I haven't answered. So do you find that as well, that monitoring all these channels might be a little bit too much at some point?
Well, like you, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen a negative post. In fact, I don't have any other social media except for LinkedIn. I did have a few LinkedIn posts that did take off, and they got some substantial viewership, substantial impressions. And as I was scrolling through the hundreds of comments, there were a few negative ones. The first negative one attacked the validity of my post, and I answered it as honestly and ethically as I possibly could. I don't take offense to these things. And then the individual kept going. So what I started realizing is sometimes people write negative counterpoints for their own viewership. So I let them have it.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
okay. You can have that. I
Right.
see what you're doing. That's your style. I had my style.
Right.
You can't make everybody fall in love with you, and
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah, and I find also not negative comments, but sometimes provocative comments are because somebody actually wants to start a dialogue. So they'll be provocative. Now I think about the only place where I get provocative comments on Facebook, because there people really want to start a dialogue. LinkedIn, I have yet to see anything negative. I think people are in good, quote unquote, good behavior. Whereas Facebook, people want to start a dialogue, and they often do it with a provocative statement.
Well, HR rules apply to business, and there's a lot to be said about the, I want to say, cleanliness of LinkedIn, or at least the assumption that your boss is watching, and that's
Okay, right.
kind of the way it should be. We shouldn't go into the political extremes. We shouldn't go into the HR violations, and that's where it needs to be. So any negative that I've seen have been really more counterpoints or contrary points.
Right.
That
Exactly.
you either address them or you don't.
Right, exactly. So let's move on. We're already 15 minutes into this, and I'm going to try to keep it under 45 minutes. Let's talk about the kind of relationship you want to have with these customers. So this is more sort of the long term. What sort of, we'll get a little into revenue models here, maybe. But what kind of relationships?
So there's two base models for Business Therapy Group. The first one is your telemedicine style, right? When your throat hurts, you don't want to go drive to a doctor. You go on a telemedicine type application.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor says, open your mouth on the camera and poof, you got a subscription or a prescription to whatever you need, right? Same thing. So the transactive customer, the first time, the one-time customer, is going to sign on, sign up. They're going to buy a block of 15 minutes to an hour and a half to diagnose a specific question. That question is discovered by answering a how do I? How do I create a P&L? How do I create a marketing strategy or a sales strategy? How do I post on LinkedIn? Whatever it is. That gives the business therapist a general idea of what we're speaking to so we can get to the chase and not waste time. From there, the meeting is scheduled. And once the meeting starts, if I'm the therapist, John, you ask me, how do I build a customer relationship management platform? And then we can start talking about all the many different platforms and how do you do that? We didn't waste time. We got to the point. And hopefully we had a great relationship there, great conversation. You saw there was perceived value and you want to come back. The ultimate goal is to have that client come back on a regular basis, like you would meet with any coach, consultant, or trusted advisor, John.
Right. Actually, why don't we call him a business therapist? I think we might as well just go right into your lingo.
There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. But the ultimate goal is to create a steady time, a routine. When you have a routine and a steady time, you now have dependability. You have things that are just, you're held to accountability, and you have to accomplish things at that time and date, right? Wow. Scheduling is everything. So you can then, as a client, become a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or twice weekly client. And meet with the same business therapist. So you have consistency, and that person is going to hold you accountable for any homework, goals, tasks that you said you were going to complete or need to complete, and then really challenge you to be a better version of a business owner.
So now that is a great segue into your other customer group, the business therapists. So what's the relationship there with the business therapist? Because a lot of that selling, quote unquote, in terms of making sure our client comes back, is actually up to the business therapist to do.
That's right. So the relationship has to be a great one. It's a consultative relationship. It's an independent contractor style relationship. They are not employees. And because of that, you have to make sure that they want to stay, right? They want to see that their hard work and effort is paying off. So that is a very nurturing, caring relationship. For the business therapist, one of the advantages of joining Business Therapy Group is clients are attracted to the platform, right? And as long as that relationship is happening, and John, if you're a business therapist, you're getting engagements and it's active and you're actively participating, then the relationship continues to grow. Obviously, there needs to be fair compensation on both sides. And as long as that, again, I always talk about perceived value. As long as the perceived value is in line, then there are no hurt feelings we have to talk about or worry about. And now everybody has that seat at the table.
Right. Now this is, again, let's move a little bit further. And we've talked about some things you're going to put in place when you're really sort of fully there, when you're starting to build out the organization. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you want to put in place to ensure that the business therapists are successful?
Yeah, for sure. The platform has to work. It has to work exceptionally well. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be dependable. We can't have crashing. It needs to be able to do what it says it's going to do. That is with any business.
Okay,
If
that's
you
a
say
given.
you're going to sell a widget and it's going to be the most perfect widget, then it better be the most perfect widget.
But I'm thinking of something different, though. Do you remember what you're talking about?
What do you think?
The training, that there is inherent in this model, an issue that you're going to have a bunch of independent, successful business therapists who may not gel in terms of methodology and so forth. The idea is to make the business therapy group, therapist group, so seamless they can actually trade off if necessary, and nobody will see a significant difference. So you and I had talked about training to ensure that we have a more unified approach.
Yeah.
So,
well, as with anything, even though we have independent contractors, you want them to be able to live up to your brand standard.
right.
Training is everything, right? There's always going to be, or at least there should be, a brand standard, and there should be a methodology around it, right? Training is of an absolute must with any new hire, new employee, contractor, etc. You always have to have proper training there. And the challenge will be for those transactive clients, the ones that are looking for telemedicine. How do we make sure or ensure that the new business therapist doesn't waste the client's time and money? They're paying client. If they signed up for 15 minutes, they want an answer.
So you're going to have a rating. You're going to have a rating system as well.
We'll have a rating system. We'll also have a way to ensure that if the session didn't go your way, you can ask for your money back. Just like a bad driver in Uber. That's fair to the client. You, again, perceived value. If you didn't get your perceived value, you shouldn't be expected to pay.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So I'm going to give you an 8 only because I was feeding you the training piece, and that was, for me, when we had that conversation, I thought, okay, he's got it. So
well, listen, we're live, so I'll be nervous. That's okay. But cool. Maybe I'm looking at you as my trusted advisor.
So I'm adhering to good business practices. 8 is still excellent. So it's maybe not excellent, it's very, very good. So we need to move on a little quicker. So we want to go to the next one, which is the all-important value proposition. Now, you've more or less hinted at it. So let's see if you can give us a nice crisp value proposition for both sides. See if you can summarize what you said over the last 15 minutes.
So for client number one, the paying client, the value proposition is getting straight to the point, diagnosing the issue that you have, holding yourself accountable. The value proposition for the business therapist is ensuring that we're going to pair you with the right clients, ensure that you actually get paid, no windshield time, ease of use platform, and then you meet the two in the middle, and there you have value.
Okay, so now tell me about the disruptive value proposition. What are you disrupting?
This is a pretty big disruptor, actually. This is going to disrupt how the trusted advisor, consultant, coach currently does business today. Without being part of a network or a group or a platform, it's going to make it really difficult for you to find clients. Why? Because clients are going to want to see this type of service or this type of solution. Yeah. We're seeing it all day long with Zoom and every new product that seems to be posted out there. It's all about how quick can I get the product, the service delivered to me, how efficiently, so I don't have to waste time. And quite honestly, I can't get up today to go anywhere. I just need everything served to me right away.
Yeah. And you have some people who just want the answer.
Want the answer.
And a lot of coaches, I'll use the word coaches, are trained to guide people, not necessarily give them the answer. And there are some people who just want an answer. So, and why sit there and force a methodology upon them when really they just want an answer? Like, should I get a lawyer to look at this, for example?
So I like to draw from a lot of my own learnings and from other consultants that I have had in the past. And there were times where I would just look at my consultant and say, can you just give me the answer already? Tell me what the answer is, right? Or the teacher in school. Tell me the answer. Stop making me guess.
And this is the true disruption, I think, which is you're disrupting this model, which is self-serving, of stringing a client along. Sometimes it's a little self-serving to turn a client into a retainer client, instead of just serving them with, this is the basis of disruption, is you cut out the walled gardens that people have erected to, usually out of financials. And you're saying we found a way to offer the service at a price point that is acceptable for the service to the customer, that allows us to pay the therapist appropriately and us to make money. And that is, for me, the true disruption.
Yeah, that's right. I don't want to trash talk the industry of consulting in any way, shape, or form. I will say
I was the head of the trade association for the industry, so I saw a lot of works.
No. So what I'm going to say, I don't want it to come across like that. I have personally experienced colleagues that their objective is to retain a client as long as possible, and that's sometimes disingenuous to me, right? Whereas you can help a client with an answer, right? You can glean experience and help your clients come to better solutions if you just kind of stop them. And I've had to do that myself with my own clients. I'm just going to give you the answer and stop you right there, so you don't go down the road of a mistake that I've made already.
I know. And it's important. It's always a balance, I think, because there are times when you actually can't give them the answer because the situation is so unique to them as a person and to the business, that there are times where you shouldn't give an answer. But there are times when really it's why waste their time and your time. So I give
there is a delicate balance. And I don't mean you always give an answer away, because there are times I don't know the answer.
Right, exactly. There's that too. Yeah.
I don't know. One of my clients is in healthcare and life sciences. I don't know that industry inside and out. So there are times where I say, I'm not extremely familiar with that aspect of your industry. You know more than I do. What do you think is best?
Yes.
And then, listen, business is universal. We can then go down the road of the decision tree.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to give you a 10 for that, because you do have a handle on disruptive nature, and at least from the world I come from, because I wrote a book on it, it is about doing something different and thinking differently. And really what you've done is you've just increased, you've disrupted. The definition of disruption is you give the customers more of what they want using new technology that allows you to do that without burning the house down, actually making money. So that's awesome. Cool. Let's move. Again, I'm sitting here with Darren Mass. We're talking about I Want My Own Company. And this is his new business, and we're putting it through the business canvas model to stress test it. And I think we have a couple of comments. Barbara says, I love this business model can see the value as both a client and a therapist. I think she'd like to be introduced.
Thank you very much.
Nori Lee says, what happens when you give a bad answer to your client?
What happens when you give a bad answer to anyone? You can hopefully correct it and realize you gave a bad answer, but it does happen. I've been wrong a lot in my career. You're not supposed to know every answer, and you can't know every answer. But if in the event you give the wrong answer and it's detrimental, we got to fix it. And you fix it with strategies. Part of being a successful business owner or an entrepreneur is making a lot of little mistakes and making very, very big wins.
Yes, exactly.
And that's just the path of any business, any consulting practice. You're going to make little mistakes, and it's testing the waters. And as you gain experience, you start realizing when a decision wasn't the right one or an answer wasn't the right one, and you start catching yourself. Right. So part of being labeled a business therapist, consultant, trusted advisor is having that experience to know if the advice you gave isn't perfect, isn't working, and you can either preface it or you can correct it.
Yeah, and I have a slightly different take on this, and I agree with you on that. I don't even know if you have to talk about good and bad answers. It also has a lot to do with how your client hears what you're saying. There's often, and this is where the coaching, the not giving them the answer, sometimes you can't because they're not going to listen to it. They're not ready to listen to it. And suddenly what you said isn't what they heard. and they start, or they decide, they take your answer and it somehow gets transformed into something else. That happens often. But yeah, I've given a couple. I think where I get upset with myself is when I don't actually give them an answer when maybe I should have. I think that's more of a danger, coming back to the basic disruption.
This is an imperfect science. And with my own clients, I know that there's no perfect. Where business therapy really comes into play is, again, the accountability model. And it's a very big misconception, John. I know you deal with this too. Just because you're the boss, you own a business, doesn't mean you're the boss. Doesn't mean you get unlimited vacations. Doesn't mean you get time off. It means you have to work the hardest to suffer the most, but you could achieve the biggest wins. But you're accountable to everybody. And I've noticed with a lot of my clients, in fact, I want to say almost all of them, they need a CEO if they don't have a board. And there's a reason why there's a board for big companies. The CEO has to answer to the board. So I often start my
shareholders, or the shareholders.
Yeah. The board answers to the shareholders, right?
That's true, right.
So I start most of my engagements with the pretense that I am now your CEO. No, you don't really report to me. But if we set a goal and it's a sales goal and you miss those numbers, pretend like you're reporting up to me and take it more seriously. Right.
So we're going to have to move on because we're running out of time. We only have 15 minutes. We still have 4 or 5 of these to go through. So let's talk about the activities. So I gave you a 10 for that. Activities that you're now going to engage in, you and your mostly outsourced team. So just give me a highlight of the things you're going to be doing in the next 2 or 3 months.
Finalizing the platform is number one. Can't have a product if you don't have, your product. So there's that. Onboarding additional business therapists. We currently have 10 right now. 4 are active, including myself. Finding and attracting clients means like this, having appearances, showing up, explaining the product or the service. That's, attractiveness, constant LinkedIn posting. I have a new appreciation for LinkedIn. I also have a new frustration with LinkedIn. They're not all winners. Consistency, value prop, all of that is, I'm learning. In fact, I'm probably going to send out a post today or tomorrow at some point saying that my posts suck. Because they have. Some of them have really sucked. I thought they were great, but they've just fizzled out.
Yeah, well, it's like doing these LinkedIn Live webinars. I mean, I did say you get the best audience, the biggest audience, and the most most minutes viewed. And that makes me think about what it is that you do that the others don't do. And a lot of it is how you present yourself, the crispness with which you speak and so forth. And so, that for me is a hit. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had anybody who hasn't done well. But I think it's also because I pretty much have a feel for who's going to do well. I say if I'm enjoying the conversation, then listeners will enjoy it.
But what I just heard is I'm the shortest, tallish guy in the room. Thanks.
I should also remind you that we've never met face to face. I have no idea how.
So that's actually crazy if you think about it. Not to go on too much of a tangent, but I have lots of conversations with people that I would consider good friends and colleagues like yourself. Yeah. And I've never met you. And that is now because of the post-pandemic world.
Yeah.
How crazy is
it's
that?
Awesome. And it's awesome. I mean, it really, it's leveling the playing field, but it's productivity. You meet more people, more interesting people, and you can filter out people much faster because you don't have to get on a train or a subway or drive to meet them. You meet them, and then you pretty much can tell if they're going to work out or not. So I'm going to give you a 10 there because I know this is one of your weaknesses that you say is that you're not totally great with bridging the gap between the idea and the actual doing it. But I think you've actually got a good handle on it. So I'm going to give you a 10 for that.
I appreciate it. And you're right. I am classically defined as a visionary. I chase the 20 shiny things, and then I'll throw 20 shiny things on top of that. Scope creep is in my nature, but execution is not. Luckily, I have a good web developer that can help me with this.
Yeah, and that's I think why I give you a 10 is recognizing that. But more importantly, you're also a great motivator of people, and you said that to me yourself. And I would say that's one of the reasons why the LinkedIn Lives with you are so successful is because there is a way that you talk and the positivity and the energy you bring that is highly motivating. I mean, I always feel energized when I talk to you.
Thank you.
I can tell from the analytics that other people feel the way, that same way, which kind of brings us to the next point, which is resources. Now, you've talked a little bit about outsourcing. So just give me a laundry list of the resources you're using now, but then a year from now, will you have employees, for example?
The biggest resource I have is my time, and it is not infinite. I went from a much greater life than work balance, and I have cashed that in for investing my time. It's been 16-hour days. Again, startup mentality. No, I don't eat Hot Pockets for dinner anymore. That part of my life has changed, but I was telling Christy, she plays the role of my wife. I was telling her.
How many people did you interview for that role?
Way too many. It took a long time. I met her when I was 28. Yeah, I was kind of depressed about that, wondering if I was going to find someone. We don't need to go down that road. Okay. But I was telling Christy that if I'm going to find success in my next venture, it has to be similar to my prior success. And I have to put myself in that same state of mind. And I've noticed more often than not, second-time successful entrepreneurs fail at the next business because all they do is throw money at the problem. And that's not how you build a brand. You build a brand with sweat, right? With trying or trial and error, testing it out, finding where things work and don't work, putting in the hours. And if you're not committed to that sweat equity, your cards are against you.
Yeah. Right? And I think the other danger is that second-time entrepreneurs come with a model. They've been successful and they think, oh, this is how it goes. Yeah. And as you said, they don't do what you're doing, which is breaking it up again, starting with a clean sheet and just thinking through everything. I still think the hardest part of being an entrepreneur is actually having to break your preconceived notions of the way it's supposed to be, or the way you think it goes, and actually looking at what you're doing with totally, with those 24-year-old eyes again.
Yeah. Well, dare I say it? Sometimes ego plays a big role in your failure.
Sometimes
I was being cautious, but yeah, if that CEO that had that big win, the ego really crushes your success in the next win. It what got you to that first level was having no ego, right? Or we all have an ego, but being more humble, humility.
Yeah, and just I think coming back to, and we're a little off topic, but saying that you don't have all the answers if you're a CEO. That's one of the things I work with my people on is ask questions. You don't have to have an answer to everything. In fact, your team wants to feel like they're listened to. So you may, even if you have an answer, let them come to an answer because they'll feel empowered. But again,
you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You need to surround yourself with smart people. Exactly.
So resources, again, you have a lot of outsourced partners. When will you start hiring employees?
So I do have a roadmap. I have a number of clients that we need to achieve before we do the next iteration. As far as employees go, there's going to be administrative tasks. There'll be client engagement and support tasks. And when we hit that milestone for the amount of either client requests that are coming in for admin work, then yes, I'll start hiring for those roles.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a 9 only because I think you have a little bit more thinking to do, and that's understandable because you're more in a discovery. But my guess is that you're going to get very specific by the end of the year of what you need. But so I'll give you a 9+ on that one. But we have another question.
Like that was generous, so you can't knock them all out of the park.
Yeah. So Nori says, what are your top pillars of success? I think you've mentioned a couple of them. One is being humble. One is looking at things fresh. Hard work. Anything else?
Yeah, it's humility. It's like you said, it is absolutely putting in the hard work and not letting the ego take over. It's constantly living by trial and error. Those are the big ones. Persistence is key, and goal setting, right? Yeah. Knowing what you're going to do. And I often ask small business owners, entrepreneurs, what's your exit strategy? And I am never surprised anymore when I get the shocked face. What do you mean?
And okay. I don't know. And I don't need to know. That's the thing.
I don't need to know, or I'm not there yet. But here's the thing, John, and I've repeated this many times where I'm getting good at it. If I asked you to run a race with me right now and you agreed and I said, on your mark, get set, go. I'm just going to wait to see what you do. And you're going to bolt out of there thinking we're running as fast as we can. And guess what? The tortoise and the hare, right? You didn't know where the finish line was. So if you're starting a business, have some concept of what you want to do with it. Do you want a growth business? Do you want a lifestyle business? Totally different management structures and ways of operating.
Which brings me to the next one, which is partnerships. Key to any success. It's the one thing that I find entrepreneurs forget about. It's a leverage tool, and you have it built into your model. So tell us very quickly, because we're running out of time. What is your partnership? What sort of partnerships are you building?
Partners it's a loosely defined term this day and age. I can call the business therapist a partner, right? Their success is the business success and vice versa. But when I'm going to take this one from an actual partnership in the business ownership, I can't do it alone. Currently, I'm the sole owner of the business. I know that my formula to success is having reliable partners. As I said before, I'm a visionary in the traction rocket fuel type of mentality. I need an integrator. So I'm looking for the integrator that can take my 20 shiny ideas, turn it into that one beautiful one and run with it. Leading, leadership, management, accountability, all the traction-y style stuff.
Right.
That's a partner that I need. And I know that my secret to success is working with collaborators and sharing that same approach, that same mentality of doing it together. That works for me, the team.
Yeah. And that attitude is what you're extending also to business therapists. After I should say I'm in line to become one of your next people on your roster, and we work as a partnership.
That's right.
It's not as a contractor to boss or any of these other kind of relationships. It's a partnership.
Well, in fact, business owners in general should always look at their employees as partners, their customers as partners. It's knowing who your customer is, right? John, if you are successful through Business Therapy Group, then I am successful as well. And so is the paying customer.
Right.
So we're all partners. And that's why I started off saying that partners is kind of loosely translated these days.
Well, I'm going to give you a 10 specifically for that last piece, which is another pillar of success is treat everybody as a partner, and things will go a lot better. And that will move us on to the next interesting piece. Now, I understand the revenue streams are still a work in progress, but you're doing very well already.
Correct.
So just tell us a little bit about the pricing model and maybe some high-level view of what at the end of the year you're going to be able to say in terms of a revenue stream.
So we're looking at this as a perceived value model. The client needs to feel like what they paid was the perceived, or they received the perceived value, that it was in line. So I matched it to the telemedicine model. You want to see a real doctor and get your diagnosis, it's $49 for the consultation. So the first 15 minutes, $49, and then every 15 minutes is $49 after that. If it's a quick question, it will be solved. It'll be answered, we hope, within the 15 minutes. But the client has the opportunity to extend. If it's an hourly on a routine or recurring revenue or intensive recurring therapy, it's $350 for the 1 hour session, which is actually less than most high-end consultants charge today. And the reason why it's less, when you factor in windshield unbillable consulting travel time, regardless if they're charging $500 or $1,000 for that 1 hour session, they're actually taking less revenue because there's all that travel time, right?
For example, and then just the marketing costs.
Sure.
You're basically telling your partners, your business therapists, that you don't really have to do a lot of marketing. You can if you want to, but if this goes well, we will actually be doing that for you, and therefore we should take a percentage of whatever gets paid by the customers because you're paid.
Taking sounds like you're a little disingenuous. It's again, perceived value. If we create this widget and that widget helps you succeed at building your next venture, then widget needs to be paid for. Right. It is the Uber model, and hopefully there's no negative connotation to fairness on their payout schedule. So let's avoid that.
Also, you're going to make money pretty quickly, unlike Uber, which is struggling with its bottom line.
The marketing challenges, but the driver can't be paired with the passenger unless they use an app. So therefore, you must pay for the app in order to find the passenger. So,
yeah, exactly. Simple things like that ensure that things get paid. You also talked about a credit system. Maybe people buy packages
Yes.
of hours,
That's
and
how it
then
works.
if
Yeah,
yeah,
you buy the block that you're looking for weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, twice weekly, if it's really intensive therapy that you need to dig out of, you name the situation,
right,
financial or employment or whatnot. You buy that block, and that's it's minutes basically that'll be deducted from the conversation.
right. And what do you think let's say you started more or less January 1st of this year, December 31st, so the fiscal and calendar year. Any idea of the number that you might have
At,
roundabouts?
at this point, we're on track for $1 million in revenue.
Which is awesome for a first year startup. That's excellent. So I'm going to
It's
give you a 10 for
it's
that.
Thank you. It's a lot of lessons learned. So again, it's
Uh-huh.
the sweat equity, and one of my pillars as well is passion. And I know
Mhm.
this is grossly overutilized, but it's so true. I am clearly passionate about this. I saw a
Mhm.
hole, I wanted to fix it. I saw a niche that needed to be out there, and and this is something that drives me. I love helping others with their businesses. I can't keep my mouth shut. I offer pro bono advice to anyone who's willing to take it. If I see going to a restaurant and I see something that didn't make sense, I'll talk. I'll bring it
Yeah.
up. It's
You're
easy
you're
for
you're
him.
you're a prototypical. I know you started out as a coach several years ago after you sold your business. Our strength is our weakness as well. We love to give. We love to help people. We're not always great in taking. So I actually say to some of my clients, I said, you need to take as much as you give, because I do groups with Vistage. And so in the group setting, a lot of people are great at telling the other person what they should do. But when you have to tell them, they don't hear it right, or they get defensive. So I always say I'd rather find good takers than necessarily givers, because everybody loves to tell the other person what to do.
Yep, that's unfortunately, I fall into that category too. I try to do it where I use the carefrontation model. Do I have
Right,
your permission to give you
right,
some constructive criticism? So now you've given me that power
yeah,
to now say, hey, listen, the way that you're greeting me at the door of your restaurant, not such a great idea,
yeah,
right? Why don't you do this approach?
yeah. One thing I should also say is that sort of carefrontation does not work in emails.
Oh, definitely not.
Right,
Yeah.
that's,
Well, email is extremely dangerous.
oh yeah, you do
I
not want
follow the
to.
KISS principle with email first of all, TLDR. No one's going to read a long email.
Right,
You don't need to write a long email. Pick up
right,
the phone, get on a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, just talk it out, because the voice that's reading it in your head is the
mhm,
interpretation.
right,
And if you're
exactly.
talking to someone who's always angry, every email that they write you is angry.
And that will also, I think, cause people not to read it. I know if I've sent an email that's a little bit provocative, there's a little hesitation to see what the return is, because I don't like to piss people off as a principal. Basically, that's one of my pillars. And I had a situation a couple of days ago where I had to tell somebody something they didn't want to hear. He had actually asked me to do it, and I wrote an email. It took me an hour to write that email, to get it to refinement. And then after I sent it, I thought, you know what? I probably should have just said, let's talk about this, instead of sending an email. But let's move on to, I give you a 10 for that. Let's move finally on to costs, because we're actually a little over time. Really quickly, what sort of costs are we talking about? Outside of
As I mentioned before, my biggest cost is time. How much time am I investing? And time is money,
oh
right?
yeah.
But unfortunately, you can't make more of it. So time is my biggest cost right now. Then you have your typical startup costs of starting a business. Web development costs, they do creep up there. Changes
Oh yeah.
happen.
Oh yeah.
I cut a lot of the costs by doing a lot of the work myself, right?
Hmm.
I went to school for engineering. Part of that, I had to learn coding. So I
Hmm.
coded some of the aspects myself. But,
Hmm.
my goal and my intent and purpose is to keep the costs as low as possible, and then
Right.
to reinvest all of the profits back into the company. Again, it's a model that works time and time again. It worked for me on my first few businesses. It'll continue to work for me as I grow.
Excellent. I'm going to give you a 10 for that. We didn't get very specific. By the
Well, you're
way,
rushing me along.
yeah, well, unfortunately, I have a 1 o'clock appointment. So, but I like to keep these at 45 minutes at the longest. Nori has one last thing to say. She thinks one of the pillars of success is honesty. And I know you take that very seriously.
Yeah, I am too honest sometimes, and I've put my foot in my mouth way too often, especially with Christy and my kids and family
Mhm.
members. Honesty to me is just I don't want to memorize a lie. And I've
Yeah.
lived that way, and I found success being in that mentality. I'm honest outwardly about my own flaws and weaknesses. In fact, I celebrate my own flaws and weaknesses.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's honesty isn't a pillar; it's a must.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
And I break it down into two components. One is integrity, both ethical, but also doing what you say you're going to do. And the other one is transparency.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
now, occasionally, if you're selling your company, you can't be fully transparent to your employees for a whole variety of reasons. In fact, there are legal
That
issues.
was actually a really big struggle for me when we sold the last business. It, I had to, I had to lie,
To dance, you had to dance.
it really bothered me, and the way I made up for it is we took care of everybody, and we
Right.
made sure that everyone was still employed, and we made sure that everyone got retention bonuses, and that was the only way I was able to justify it to myself. It was painful, and it still haunts me today. There was one or two conversations where I had to outwardly lie, and it just bothered the heck out of me. And
Yeah.
even my partners, they saw my face. They knew how much it bothered me.
Yeah, and again, that's honesty is a very important topic to talk about. In some ways, you had to pick a higher road, which is this is good for everyone. That's what you ended up doing.
The greater purpose. Well, we
Yeah.
were at the point where we had to sell the business, so the greater purpose was keeping everybody employed, which the acquiring company did. So.
Yeah.
So listen, we could all rationalize anything. That's where human beings are separated from the animal kingdom. We have the ability to rationalize,
For
and
both,
we
for
can
good and
rationalize
bad.
everything,
Right,
right?
exactly.
And unfortunately, ethics are gray because what's ethical for you in a situation might not be ethical for the other person. So
Right.
it's a really tight rope to have to walk and navigate.
Yeah, I actually had a whole section in my book about disruptive leadership that talks about ethics and egos, I called it, and it's the fact that ethics also change. Our sense of society of what we consider to be ethical and non-ethical changes.
Right. Every culture, something you have totally
Yeah.
different ethics in some cultures. Some, we don't have to get into examples, but some extreme cultures, they do a lot of unethical things in our cultural view.
Yeah, exactly. And are they any less happy or successful? Usually not. In some cases, we know of countries that are what we consider not totally ethical, and the populace is quote unquote okay with it. Anyways, so let's wrap up quickly. I give you a 96. Excellent.
Cool.
I have no doubt you're going to be successful, and I'm looking forward to participating as a partner with you and continuing our LinkedIn Live events. And thank you, especially Nora and Barbara, for asking questions. Excellent questions. And next week will be a rebroadcast of the first LinkedIn Live that you and I did, Darren. There's no I in entrepreneurship. The best single LinkedIn Live in terms of the analytics that I've done. I think we had over 600 minutes that people viewed. Just the first. I've rebroadcasted, I think, twice since then.
Oh, wow.
And always attracts a lot of viewers. So it's an excellent LinkedIn Live. And again, thank you, Darren. And I look forward to continuing the discussion.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to the audience.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.